And welcome back to the Livingston Parish News Podcast. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us today. We have a special guest, I guess you could say, the assessor, Mr. Jeff Taylor. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Doing fine. Good morning.
Good. Glad to hear it. We're here to talk about a couple of different topics. If you are a property owner, it's going to affect you. So please, we hope you pay attention. Want to remind everybody that we do upload these shows to www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. They are free. So, Mr. Taylor, I want to ask that you introduce yourself first. You are the tax assessor in Livingston Parish. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us about your job description.
Okay, I'm Jeff Taylor. I'm the assessor. I was elected in 2000, and I've been the assessor now 20 years. This August will be 20 years. I'm married to Delia. My wife, I have two children, Zachary and Caroline, and they're all doing very well throughout this COVID-19 that we went through, and we're abiding by the rules that have been placed before us, and we're doing quite well.
So let's talk about that for a second. You know, your office, some of the things we're going to be talking about today are going to require people to come see you. Your office is, of course, up there near the courthouse in Livingston. You have a brand new office. It's very beautiful. And it is designed to help serve the people. So, you know, one of the things about COVID is that it's kind of changed the way public gatherings occur. When the people who will be required or requested to come see you guys at your office, you know, what are some of the things they can expect when they come in?
They can expect that the lobby is going to be very closely monitored. We're not going to allow a large gathering of people in there because there's people that's uncomfortable with that. And I'm talking about the constituents. They're telling us that if we've got to come out there, how many people are you going to have in the lobby? How do we handle it? So what we're trying to tell people is this. If it's something that you feel like you can handle over the phone, please call us. Because there's a lot of things that we can do for you over the phone, and it's not necessary to come out there. But if you do feel like you need to come out there, then we're going to make accommodations for you to come in there. We're going to be very protective of our employees because if we're all working together in there, we see each other every day, and so we kind of can monitor that. But if we have a lot of people coming in that you don't know where they've been and stuff like that, you have to be very careful because what we cannot have is we cannot have an outbreak in our office of COVID because, as you know, once one person is exposed to it, you have to quarantine everybody. So at that point, you'd basically have an office shut down. I know that Ascension Parish run through that. One of their employees got it. And so they had to quarantine a lot of their people. And so it really put a crimp into how they were handling their business. So we're going to be very mindful of it. We're going to wipe down the counters. It's nothing personal. If you see us when you walk out, we're going to wipe down everything. We're going to wipe the doors down. We're going to make sure that we're doing everything. We're going to do our due diligence.
So right now, looking at just over 500 cases in Livingston Parish, 33 deaths, as well as getting those tests up there, about 8,500 tests. So pretty good positivity rate running through the parish right now, which means the number of positive cases coming back after test is low, which is a good sign. Let's talk a little bit about the assessor's office, you know, what you guys do before we get into the meat of this deal. So just give us, 32,000 feet. What is it that you and the folks who work for you do?
Well, we assess property. A lot of people think that we set the tax rates. We do not. All we do is put a value on your property. So we go out to your home, we measure your house or your business, and we come back and we use our tools that are in our office, our technology, and we can put a value on that property. And then once we do that, we'll send those values to the districts and we'll send them to the legislative auditor's office. And then they'll come back with the amount of millages that are necessary to run their offices. So the school board, the sheriff's office, the drainage districts, the recreations, they set their own tax rates. They set their own millages. And that's usually it's things that you have voted on already. You voted to pass that tax, and then all they do is use a formula. We send that assessment to them, they put it into the formula, and that's how you come up with your tax rate. And so, but we do the mapping for the parish. We have a mapping system that is top notch. We are very proud of our mapping system. before, I wish I would have brought it with me, but before we did this mapping system, we had a little board, and I'm talking about a board about this big that had the whole parish outlined, and that's what we used to try to find our wards and our districts and everything off of that board that stayed in a corner. And every time we needed it, we pulled it out. Technology is a wonderful thing. It has really caused us to be able to take care of getting all of the measurements in our parish. You know, when we first come into office, we didn't have measurements on hardly anything. There was just nothing measured. And if it was, then it was the measurements were off. You cannot do an accurate reassessment if you don't have accurate measurements. And so we found that when we first come into office that there was an awful lot of homes that were on the roll for $74,900. And if you want to know why that is, it's because homestead is $75,000. So they just put them on at that rate, and that's what the millage was set on. So when we came in, we had to fix a lot of that. So we went about making sure that we were able to get accurate measurements. And so we do all of that. We do the commercial properties. We do the exempt properties. We do the residential properties. We do personal property for businesses, for their inventory. So we stay quite busy in our office. During this COVID thing, our office was closed because the parish closed the offices down, but my people were not closed. We worked through this whole thing because we're in reassessment year this year. So we knew we had to get it done. There was talk about putting the reassessment off to next year. But a lot of people didn't have the stomach for that over at the legislature, so they said you need to do it this year. So we were working the whole time, just not having the office open. But we had people there at the office working, and we would work from home. So we got it done, and so our reassessment is finished.
So, well, let's get into that. We'll come back to that mapping system that you talk about, because I want the folks out there to know about it in a little more specifics. But first, we've kind of got two changes here. First, we're going to bring it back up. A lot of people don't like to talk about it much anymore, but the Great Flood of 2016, you applied through, I believe, and you can explain the process to it, but there was a 20% reduction in properties or property values for reassessment. That is falling off this year. That's being taken off. So, and then from there, what will be re-added will be a COVID assessment. So first, let's talk about the process of coming up with that value for the flood, the flood reduction, how you came up with it, what you had to go through to do it, and why it's coming off this year, and then we'll jump into COVID.
Okay. Well, with the flood, a lot of people remember. Everybody, if you flooded, you certainly remember the flood. I was one of those that flooded. My home flooded, so I was right into the mix of it with everybody, and I knew what they were going through. What we did, some of the parishes offered to give a large reduction because their tax base is so large that they could give a more of a reduction in 1 year, and then it would fall off. Well, I felt that it was fair for Livingston Parish. If Ascension is going to get a 70% reduction, then I felt it was fair that Livingston Parish got a 70% reduction. We just had to go about it a little different way. I knew that we couldn't give a 70% reduction in 1 year because it would have bankrupted every entity that was around here. And so what we did is we gave a 20% for the first year, 25% for the second year, and then 20 and 20 for the next 2 years. So that comes up to be a total of 85% reduction total that you received if your home was flooded. And so we got that approved. You ask how it all happened. First thing we had to do was find out who all flooded. And you say, well, that should be easy to do. Well, when we first went to the federal government to ask, how do we go about doing this? How do we know who flooded and who did not flood? They said, well, we can give you this information, but we can't give you any names or addresses. I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, we can tell you that the water got to 8 feet here. Well, how deep did it get in that house? Did it get in that house? We don't know if it got in there, but we can't even, if we did know, we could not give you that information because it's proprietary and it's personal information. So we had to go about making sure that our people were going out. We drove streets to find out who flooded. And it didn't matter if you got 1 inch or 5 feet. If you flooded, you flooded. And I'm keenly aware of that now because I got 18 inches. And 18 inches, it took cabinets, it took flooring, it took walls, it took electrical, took all of those things out. So we knew that we had to do something. There was some that didn't think that that was enough. I understand, because they were sitting there and they were flooded and they were having to come up with the assessment and the value. But we had to make sure that we could do right for our people and do right for our districts. So we were able to come up with that, and I spread it out over a large number of years, 4 years, so you would get that reduction that you deserved. And so this year it's coming off. The tax commission in the state is telling us that that reduction has to come off this year. So the 20% is disappearing. So you will no longer have that. The values are going back. Now, what we're telling people is this: if you are still recovering from the flood, if you're still working on your home, you're still without cabinets, you're still without the necessities to run your house, to live in your house, let us know, because the only way we can help you is if we know. So if you're still replacing flooring, if you're replacing walls, or if you don't have your cabinets, you don't have your sinks, you don't have all those things, come in and let us know, because it's no longer going to be on the 20%. It's now going to be on value. So if you're living in a house that's $125,000 and you still have $30,000 worth of damage, I'm not going to do 20%. I'm going to give you that full amount of your value, and that's going to come off your assessment. So if you're still working on your house, please let us know. Call us. Come see us. Even if you can't get in the front door, call us. We will come out and look at your house. We're going to need you to bring proof that your house is still being worked on, and then we're going to verify that proof. And that's important to understand. We are going to have people on the streets verifying that, because to make it sure that everybody is treated fairly, I have to verify that information. But it does help if you'll bring us some pictures and some documentation letting us know that you are flooded and this is what you're still working on.
So, and important to refer back to what you discussed at the beginning. If you're going to come see the assessor, please remember, try to wear a mask. You're going to be going through some COVID things as well. But want to now back switch, I guess you can say, and move over to COVID, because that's falling off the rolls for everyone, for most people, if you can't prove it. Getting into COVID, let's have the same discussion. What was, you've kind of kept your eye on the real estate market. What is the percentage, first and foremost? How did you reach that? And how long is that going to last?
Okay. Here's the way it worked with COVID. We started looking at sales. We can pull the sales weekly, daily, we can pull them monthly, whatever. And so we try to come up with a price per square foot. And so we have been watching the price per square foot pretty closely. Well, if you notice in the first part of COVID, those numbers stayed real close to what they were, because as you and I talked about a few minutes ago, those contracts and everything and those things were signed way back in January, February, and the beginning of the COVID deal. So they were selling, and so they was holding prices. We know that showings were down. At one point, I was told by some real estate agents that showings were down 70%. We're now hearing that some of the values are down 5, 10, 12, 13% over what they were earlier. So we're watching it. So we know that we don't know what's going to happen in July, August, September, October, November. So, but we know we have to cut it off at a certain date to get our reassessment done for this year. So we've got it to where we know we're going to give a 10% reduction this year on homeowners, because we're basically going against, saying we're guessing that it's going to go down some. We all feel like it's going to go down, but we just don't know how much. If it goes down more than that, that will go towards your next year's assessment, because like I said, we have to cut it off at a certain point. At this date, we got to know this is what it was. Well, in July, August, September, October, if it drops 10, 15, 20%, you need to be compensated for that. And I'm going to do that all in 1 year. So you're going to get 10% this year. And if it goes down more than that next year, I'm going to put that back on also. Now, it's important to realize that's for residential. For commercial, it was no way for us to come up with across the board, straight up assessment reduction. Because to give you an example, if you rent from someone and you've been paying your rent the whole time, and you own a restaurant, I'll use a restaurant for example, you've been paying your rent the whole time. If I went across there and gave a 20% across the board, the person that is renting the place to you, they get a 20% even though they were getting the rent paid to them the whole time. But the person that owns that restaurant would get no reduction whatsoever.
Right.
So we need for them to come in and show us their loss of business. We need them to show us their loss of inventory. And all of those things are things that we can take off. Your barbershops, your bars, your restaurants, your health clubs, movie theaters, all of those guys, stores. Juban Crossing, you look at Juban Crossing, it looks like right when they started to open the stores. It's empty parking lots when you go through there. Right. Those are things we have to know. How much of a loss did you incur? And so we're not going to put it straight out there as a straight across the board. We're going to have you come in. So please come in and let us know. If we don't know, we cannot help you.
Right.
The information is important. So we're going to make sure that we have people there that know business. We know we've got our commercial specialists. They're educated. They know how to do commercial properties. We do the Marshall Swift. We also know how to read the personal properties for your inventory, your machinery, your things like that. So we can give you the reduction that you deserve. Because let me tell you something. You deserve that reduction because you were out of business, and we're going to make sure you get it.
So important to note, in the residential numbers, not necessarily in the commercial, but home sales were down year over year, May to May, roughly 22%, 41 total homes, 158 were sold in May of 2020. And in May of 2019, 199 were sold. They were also down, as you and I discussed, about $13,000 average home price. So $211,000 down to $198,000. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens especially over the next couple of months, which are usually hot.
Let me tell you this. Let me add to this. When you do a reassessment, the way the tax commission and the state requires you to do it, because used to you didn't have the technology to make sure you could do this every year. But the numbers I have to use, this is a boring fact, but it's important for people to understand. I have to use numbers as is January the 1st of 2019. I can go 6 months before and 6 months after. So I go from July the 1st of 18 through June the 30th of 19. And I have to come up with the numbers to put on your assessment for your price per square foot, all sales that happened during that time period. What is something that changed in the last 2 months that would throw those numbers completely to the wolves? COVID. So we're sitting here saying, why are we still using numbers from a year and a half ago? And we didn't have COVID figured into there. And then we're told, well, you'll get that on the next reassessment. And I said in 2024. So if COVID is only supposed to last for a year, year and a half on our sales, people will never experience that because when the numbers I have to use is going to be for the 2024 assessment, COVID's already gone in those sales. You should get it based on the current market. And that's what I'm doing. I'm saying, look, I understand what you're saying about the 19, but my reassessment is going to be based off of that and what has happened with COVID. And I'm going to make sure that people get their reductions because they deserve it. Does that mean that the districts are going to have to tighten their belts? Yes, they're going to have to tighten their belts. I've had districts call me and say, look, if you start to drop that, it's going to hurt our deal. We're not going to have the money. Tell that to the business owners who have lost businesses. They have, some of them's not coming back, McHugh. They can't. They couldn't take this hit. So you tell that to them. When I say, you tighten your belts, and we're telling the business, well, maybe you have to tighten your belts. We can't support you. Well, districts, you may need to tighten your belts. I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to lower my millages. Now, I'm giving the 10% reduction, and I'm doing the other with the businesses. So I can't tell you how much of a reduction we're going to have, but I can tell you that I'm going to lower my millages. Right. And I'm going to lead by example. I'm not advocating that anybody else do it. It's not my job to go in there and ask them. At one time, I was asking people to lower their millages and try to give it back to the people, but they have boards and everything that people put in there that they say, this is what you're to do.
Right.
If they lower their millages, that's fine. If they don't, that is them. But if your tax bill is too high, you may need to call those districts and ask them, did they lower their millages?
Right.
And let them explain to you. They have good reasons for not lowering their millages, and some of them have reasons for lowering their millages. I know that the assessor's office is going to lower my millages to help out. It won't be a lot. My millage is not that much. But every little bit helps. If everybody would lower their millages 10%, then that would mean that the whole thing would go down 10% more. So you'd have 10% on your residential, and you'd have 10% off your millages, equals 20%.
Yeah, and it would make a difference, especially in the overall bill. And it's especially important what you brought up earlier, because if things were based off 2019, that was a red letter year for Livingston Parish real estate. Over 2,000 homes sold, finally crossed the $200,000 average home price across the entire year, got up to about $130, $140 a square foot. That'd be tough for people this year.
Here's the thing. We were recovering. This is the second reassessment in a row that something has happened. Back in 2016, we were through a reassessment. And August of 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, all that time, different people flooded at different times. The world turned upside down.
Right.
And so we had to go back in and do reassessment. So there is a provision called 1978 that was, a lot of people call it the Katrina provision, that you can go back when something like that happens, you throw those other numbers out the door and you go based on current deal. It would have been ludicrous for me to come in there 4 years ago and say, oh no, you got to still pay your same assessment. I know all your stuff's out in the front yard and it looks like a war zone out there, but you know what? I need you to go ahead and pay this. That would have been ludicrous. It would have been uncaring and it would have been ludicrous. We didn't do that. We had people out there driving every day. They worked Saturdays, they worked Sundays, they worked late into the nights. Many of them had homes that flooded, and they were still out there working. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. They don't deserve a pat on the back. That's what they get paid for.
Right.
And so we had them out there doing it, and so we were able to come up with a formula that would give you something. 4 years later, we're recovering from the flood. Like you said, 19 was a red letter year for us. Man, we're on the recovery. Livingston Parish is on the map. We're doing great. COVID. And so here we are, finished with reassessment again in May. Here we go on again, trying to figure out what kind of reduction are we going to give, because we've had another thing to hit us.
Right.
And so we need to do it currently. We need to do it through technology. I know that it's popular to say that we need people out there just running here and there, making sure that you can get assessments done here and everything. Technology is a wonderful thing. We had a flyover done. We can now assess property from the flyover that goes over our map. It can tell us how many square foot houses are and stuff. We still verify, but technology is a wonderful thing. It keeps people from just running back and forth. How many of y'all wanted to see the assessor's office during COVID? You didn't want nobody coming to your house. How would you have liked it if my guys would have knocked on your door and said, hey, we're just here to measure your house for you? Well, you didn't want to see anybody.
Right.
It would have been ludicrous for us to do anything like that. But we was able to get on our map, do our flyover. We was able to see all new properties. We was able to sketch them out, draw them out, do the things that were necessary. And we come up with a very good plan for what we're going to do for COVID.
So again, that reduction going to be 10% also. The assessor here is going to be lowering his millage by 10% and is hoping some other groups will be doing the same thing. Want to talk a little bit, now that we've talked about the flood, talked about COVID, just to wrap up here, want to hear a little bit more, bring that flyover forward into the mapping system. It's an important system. You can actually access it on the assessor's website, so you can go take a look at your own property, your neighbor's property if you like, kind of see who owns what. But it's very interesting. Give us a little bit of background on that just to kind of wrap it up.
Okay. The background on it started really many years ago. If you remember, we decided to put all assessments on the roll, on internet. Okay. People said, why would you ever do that? I was a big proponent of it. I pushed that and pushed that and pushed that. There's a couple reasons. Because if you're on the tax roll and you're paying your fair share, it's only right that everybody else pays theirs. So when they come in and they would tell us, well, I've got 1,200 square feet. Well, if I had a 1,800 square foot right beside you and he was correct and the 1,200 square feet should have been 1,800, his is never going to be right. His is always going to be less than yours. So we had to get out there and start looking at it. So we put it on the roll. You would not believe the number of people that decided it was necessary to call us and tell us that their neighbor's house was really bigger than it was. Their neighbor's house, they did not have destruction on their house like they said they did. This is what really happened to their house. My cousin is not on the roll. He lives right down the road. My parents are not on the roll. My brothers and sisters, you would not believe the people that called and told on their own family. That's what we did it for, because we wanted to make sure that it was accurate. If my mother is going to pay her fair share on her assessment, then everybody's going to pay their fair share. If we want to make it to where nobody pays their fair share, okay, but I don't want to do that. I want everybody to pay their fair share. So we then decided that that's what we're going to do. We're going to put it on the internet. Started getting people to call us and reporting it. Then we decided we'd go to the mapping system. We've got to have a mapping system that works. We need to know where the boundaries are. We need to get it to where the school districts are not overlapping. This is where the line is. So if this house that used to be just because you had a big field, 100 acres, we're going to put a subdivision in there, and we're just going to, well, most of it's over here in this district, so we just put it all in there. No, this is where the line is. In the same subdivision, you can have somebody paying in one school district, the other people paying in another school district. That's the right thing to do because that school district is dependent on that income to come in. So our mapping system cleaned up a lot of that. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. No map is perfect, but it gave us a roadmap to follow to start getting those districts correct. We cleaned up a lot of that. Then we decided, okay, now what we need to do is we don't need to just have the map to do that. We need to do a flyover. And the flyover is going to be taken over the whole parish, and they do it in the winter. And the reason they do it in the winter is because the foliage is off the trees, so you can see the houses. So the first one we did was resolution. It was like in 2014. The resolution was okay. Wasn't great, but it was a new product. The last one we did is a 1 and a 2 inch pixel. They can see a golf ball on the green with our flyover that we have now. When I went to a conference out in Portland, I really thought when they were telling us about this and we were purchasing everything, and they were saying you're some of the first in the nation to do this. And I really thought, okay, yeah, we're first, we may be first in the state. And it turned out that we were the first in the state to do this 1 inch. I go to this conference, and as I'm there, they start talking to me, and I realize that California, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, they've never even heard of it. And so they have me get up and explain to them and talk to them about why we're doing this and what it's done for us. So when they said we were some of the first in the nation to do it, we were some of the first in the nation. Made me very proud because when I first became assessor, you'd go to conferences and they'd have your name up there as the things to not do. And now they have us speaking and telling people of things to do. Livingston Parish is growing. I'm proud that I'm a part of that. I'm proud of the people here. We have done a lot of good work out the assessor's office. And it's because I've got good people. They work, they want to do it right. The flyover comes in. When I first started training them on the flyover and they would look at it, they could take and they could measure that house. It would tell you how wide the eaves are. You can get down and see the doorknobs on it. So people started calling, well, we don't like the fact that you can do this. It's already out there. That technology is already out there. Google's been doing it for years. And so we use the tool to make sure that our assessments are better. We make sure they're fair, and we make sure that we can pass our ratio studies. Now, that's what we do out there, and the flyover has been great. There's several other things that we're about to try to start inputting. One of the things that we want to try to do is a program to where we can go into the buildings, like schools and everything like that, and we can actually video and film the inside of those buildings. And if something were to happen, it would be uploaded to our mapping system so our first responders could know, okay, in this room, if you have a problem, here's what's in that room. At this house, you've got a shed behind it. You've got bushes behind it. They can download that on their way there, and they can see the layout. A fire department can see where all the fire hydrants and everything are. All that's on our maps. And we're trying to get to one where we can get into the buildings. And if we ever get that, it is going to make our first responders, our police officers, look, our police officers are under the gun all the time. They need they need to know. And so we're doing the things like that to make sure that our map is going to show that.
Well, again, Assessor, Mr. Jeff Taylor, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Please remember you can visit his website to get the phone number. Losing that 20% reduction because of the flood. This was the final year. However, going to be gaining about 10%. Of course, if you are still working on your house because of flood damage, please get in contact with his office. Please be sure you are prepared to deal with COVID mitigation efforts at his office that is in Livingston next to the courthouse. Again, sir, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Our website is livingstonassessor.com. Please visit us and give us input. Give us input on how you would like to see things done. If you think we're doing a good job, let us know. If you don't, let us know.
And again, thank you for being here, sir. My name is McHugh David, publisher and editor of the news. Appreciate you guys joining us again for the Livingston Parish News Morning Show. Please, oh God, this is not the morning show. I do that too often.
That's all right.
For the Livingston Parish News Podcast, of course, we do upload these shows. They are free. We have audio and video versions at www.livingstonparishnews.com/podcast. Next one coming up is going to be a local business, Restoration One. We're going to be joining them Friday. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you have a great day.